You need a home, and I need a mommy, the little girl says, her voice cutting through the howl of the wind like a bell in a blizzard. Her cheeks are raw from the cold, her hands bare and trembling. Clara Merrick blinks against the snow blowing sideways across the Dakota Territory station platform, still clutching her carpet bag as if it might anchor her in a place she was never meant to be left alone. Follow my story to the end and tell me in the comments the city you're watching from so I can see how far this story has traveled. The train that brought Clara across half the country has already shrieked its last and vanished into the white horizon. The neat dark green coat she left Boston in is dulled by days of travel, its hem stiff with frost. She scans the platform for the face of Samuel Harlan, the man who promised to meet her, but all she finds are strangers hurrying into the wind. From the doorway of the station office, the clerk calls out, "You waiting on someone?" "Yes," she answers, voice catching in her throat. "Samuel Harlan. He was supposed to meet me." "Ain't seen him," the clerk says. "No one's here to fetch you. You'd best find shelter. Hotels are full. Boarding house, too." The words sink like stones in her stomach. He promised. But promises don't stop frostbite. Two cowhands stomp past, climbing into a wagon without glancing her way. In minutes, the platform empties, leaving only the wind and the groan of the swinging sign above her. Snow clings to her skirt. Dusk presses close. Then from the far end of the platform, two small figures appear, a girl pulling along a younger boy. Their steps are uneven in the drifts, their coats thin. The girl's braid has come loose, the boy's boot is bound with twine. They stop in front of her. The girl lifts her chin. "You look like you don't belong in the cold," she says, "and we don't have a mama anymore." Clara crouches slightly. "Where are your parents?" "Our pa's name is Jack Monroe," the girl announces. "He's got a farm past the cottonwoods. He's looking for a wife, but he's busy today." Clara shakes her head. "I don't know him. You will if you come with us. He won't say no. We've been waiting for a lady." "You'll do." "I came here to meet someone else," Clara says. The girl crosses her arms. "Well, he isn't here, is he? Pa's just not at the station. We're here to fetch you." The boy's voice is small. "It's real cold, miss. Our house has a fire." Clara's eyes fall to their red ears, the boy's chapped lips. "Where's your house?" "Not far," the girl says. "Past the big fence through the cottonwoods. We walk it all the time." She holds out a bare hand. "Come on. If you stand here much longer, you'll turn to ice." The clerk steps out again, his breath a white cloud. "Best decide, ma'am. Sun will be down in an hour." Clara stares at the girl's hand trembling in the wind. She can stay and risk the night in a strange town or follow two children to a man she's never met. Her mind runs over the miles behind her, the silence of the station, the way the boy leans into his sister's side for warmth. Slowly, she shifts her carpet bag to her other hand and places her gloved fingers in the girl's palm. "Show me the way," she says. The girl grins. "I'm Anna. This is my brother Toby." "Clara Merrick," she replies. Clara Anna repeats thoughtfully. "Pa will like that name." They lead her off the platform, their boots crunching in the fresh snow. The wind tugs at her coat, but ahead a thin ribbon of smoke rises into the gray sky. Clara tightens her shawl and steps into their tracks, the cold biting at her cheeks. Beyond the stands of cottonwoods, a narrow lane appears marked by a leaning fence patched with rope. Beyond it sits a low-weathered house, smoke curling from its chimney. Anna pushes the door open without knocking, and a wave of heat rushes out to meet them. Inside, the air is thick with wood smoke and the smell of fresh bread. A cast-iron stove glows in the corner, its light flickering against rough-hewn walls. Clara stands just inside the threshold, stamping the snow from her boots. By the stove sits a round loaf on a cooling board, its crust dark and crackled. Then she hears boots on packed snow outside. The door at the far end opens, and a tall man steps in, brushing frost from his shoulders. His gray eyes pass over her once, not lingering, not hurried, and then settle into an unreadable calm. Anna and Toby brighten. "Pa, we brought her," Anna says, as if delivering news that needs no explanation. Jack Monroe doesn't ask her name. He just nods toward a chair near the stove. "Sit," he says, voice low. "Eat." Clara hesitates for a moment, her carpet bag still in her grip, the heat from the stove lapping at her legs. She glances at Anna and Toby, who have already settled on the rug in front of the fire, their boots half off their eyes, flicking between her and their father. Jack moves to the counter, lifts the lid off a heavy pot, and ladles steaming soup into a thick ceramic bowl. Sit, he repeats his tone, not unkind, but leaving no room for argument. Clara sets her bag beside the chair and lowers herself onto it. The seat feels worn from years of use, edges rounded smooth by hands she'll never know. Jack places the bowl in front of her. Steam rises, carrying the scent of onions, carrots, and slow-cooked meat. "Thank you," she murmurs. Jack inclines his head slightly before returning to a workbench near the far wall. A block of wood and a carving knife wait for him there, and he picks them up as though he'd never been interrupted. The children lean toward each other, whispering behind cupped hands, glancing at Clara with a mixture of curiosity and expectation. She takes her first spoonful of soup, and the warmth spreads through her chest, melting a tightness she hadn't realized was there. The room is quiet, except for the hiss of the stove and the rhythmic scrape of Jack's knife against the wood. Clara's eyes wander. Tin mugs hang from hooks above the counter. The braided rug is patched with thread that doesn't quite match. Heavy boots sit drying near the door. Every detail speaks of necessity, not excess. When she finishes the soup, she rests her spoon in the bowl, unsure whether to speak or simply rise and leave. Jack hasn't asked how she came to be here, nor mentioned Samuel Harlan. His silence isn't cold exactly. It's as though he's given her permission to stay without binding her to anything. That night, Jack says nothing more about her sudden appearance. Anna and Toby drag a folded quilt from a trunk and help her make up a cot near the stove. Clara lies under its weight, staring at the flicker of the firelight against the beams, listening to the faint creak of the house settling against the wind. Morning comes quietly with the muted gray of winter pressing against the frosted window panes. Clara wakes to the smell of coffee and the sound of the children's bare feet padding across the floor. Jack is already outside, his silhouette visible through the glass as he splits logs, the axe swinging in steady arcs. Over the next days, an unspoken routine forms. Clara sweeps the ashes from the hearth each morning, folds the wool blankets neatly at the foot of the children's bed, and mends whatever needs mending: shirts worn thin at the elbows, socks riddled with holes. Anna sits close when Clara sews, peppering her with questions about letters and words, and soon Toby joins them. They practice writing at the kitchen table, a blunt pencil scratching across scraps of brown paper. Jack never comments on these lessons, but each morning without fail, there's a tin cup of coffee waiting for Clara when she comes in from the children's room. One evening, she finds her boot split at the heel, neatly stitched, and set by the door. Another day, a thick wool scarf appears on the peg nearest her chair, its scent faintly of pine. The children begin calling her Miss Clara, a title both formal and dear. They show her the little wooden animals Jack carves in the evenings: smooth horses, a bear with one ear slightly shorter than the other, a bird poised as if ready to take flight. Clara lines them on the windowsill above the table where the pale winter light touches them each morning. But beyond the cabin walls, the world is less warm. When she walks with the children along the fence line or to the pump, she feels eyes on her. A ranch hand passing by slows his horse gaze, lingering too long. A woman in a wagon glances once then again with something unreadable in her eyes. The first time, Clara tells herself it's nothing, but the glances accumulate, each one heavier than the last. They're not curiosity, they're questions whispered but unasked. Inside, the fire crackles and the children's laughter fills the air. In those moments, Clara can almost believe she's part of something that could last. But outside, the wind carries rumors, and she can feel them drawing nearer. One morning, Jack hitches the wagon. "We'll go into town," he says. "Need supplies." Anna and Toby stay with a neighbor. The ride is quiet, the air so cold it pinches Clara's cheeks. At the general store, the heat from the iron stove seeps into her bones, and the mingled scent of coffee and kerosene settles in her nose. She lingers near the counter while Jack moves down the aisles, selecting nails and seed packets. The shopkeeper misses. Harrow, tall, sharp-eyed, wrapped in a maroon shawl, counts coins for another customer before turning toward them. "Well, well," she says, voice carrying easily across the room. "That was quick, wasn't it?" Living under a man's roof without a wedding ring to show for it. The words land like a slap. The stove's warmth suddenly feels suffocating. A man by the window pauses mid-task. Two ranch hands by the oats fall silent. Jack doesn't look at Clara. He sets a sack of flour on the counter, slides coins across the wood. His face is unreadable. Clara forces her voice steady. "We came for supplies," she says quietly, though she's not sure anyone hears. Mrs. Harrow arches an eyebrow. "Supplies for a household, I expect. Must be nice to settle in so quickly." Jack gathers the parcels, nods toward the door. The ride home is wordless snow flurries drifting in from the west. Clara stares at the road ahead, her hands tight beneath her cloak. Mrs. Harrow's words echoing like the wind. By the time they reach the cabin, the light is fading into that dim blue that comes just before nightfall. Jack carries the supplies inside without looking back at her. Clara hangs her cloak by the door, the quiet of the room pressing close. When Anna and Toby return from the neighbors, their chatter fills the space, but Clara's mind is still trapped in the heat of the store, feeling every stare that burned against her skin. That night when the children are asleep, she stands by the fire with a cup of tea cooling in her hands. Jack sits at the table repairing a broken hinge, the scrape of metal on metal the only sound between them. Finally she speaks. Silence can wound as much as words, you know. Jack pauses, setting down the hinge. His eyes meet hers, steady, not sharp, but unreadable. "I don't let other people's talk decide who stays in my home," he says simply. It's not an apology. Not a promise either. But something in his tone says he's already chosen which battles are worth his breath. Clara turns back to the fire, unsure if she feels comforted or more alone than before. The days press forward into early spring. The snow melts into mud and the air grows damp with thawing earth. Anna starts attending the small schoolhouse, walking there with 2 neighbor children. Toby stays home with Clara. One afternoon, Clara is mending one of Jack's shirts when a sharp knock rattles the door, too quick to be a neighbor. A boy from the schoolhouse stands there, breathless, holding out a folded note. "For Mr. Callum," he says, then runs off before she can ask a question. Mrs. Merrick. "Please ask Mr. Monroe to speak with me tomorrow regarding an incident with Anna." Clara's stomach tightens. When Jack comes in from the barn, she hands him the note. He reads it without a flicker of expression. "I'll go first thing," he says. "Do you know what happened?" "No, but I'll find out." The next day he returns later than usual. Anna trails behind her dress, wrinkled her braid half undone. She slips into her room without a word. "She got into a fight," Jack says flatly, hanging his hat on its peg. "With a boy in her class. She bloodied his lip. His father wants her kept home for a week." What Clara sets down her sewing, why Jack's jaw tightens. "He said, 'You're just someone here to keep my bed warm.' Anna told him to take it back. He didn't. She made him." The words hit like a blow to her ribs. She stares at her hands. "She shouldn't have done that." "No," Jack agrees. "But she was defending you." "I'm the reason she's in trouble," Clara murmurs. "I'm giving them things to say about this family." Jack doesn't respond. He moves to the sink, rolling up his sleeves, his broad back to her as he washes his hands. The sound of water splashing in the basin fills the space where a conversation might have been. That evening, Anna keeps to her room and Toby sits beside Clara without speaking, his small hands folded in his lap. The silence between all of them is heavier than the coldest winter night. After the children are in bed, Clara goes to her cot. Her eyes fall on the carpet bag tucked beneath it, the one she's never fully unpacked. She pulls it out, folding her few dresses with slow, deliberate motions. Each piece of fabric feels colder than the last. She's almost finished when a flicker of light through the window catches her eye. Pausing, she steps quietly into the main room and opens the door. The night air is sharp, the yard washed silver by the moon. Jack sits on the top step, a lantern beside him. Toby's red scarf spread across his knee. His big hands move with careful precision, pushing a needle through the frayed wool, adjusting the thread before each stitch. He could have handed it to her. She's mended nearly everything else since arriving, but he hasn't. This, he's decided, is his task tonight. Clara watches from the doorway, the glow of the lantern casting his face in warm gold against the dark. No one else will see this work, and Toby will wake to find the scarf whole again, never knowing the time it took. Her grip on the carpet bag loosens. The thought of leaving slips back into the shadows where it belongs. What binds them here isn't a ring or a promise. It's the quiet, deliberate way they keep each other whole. She steps back inside, closing the door softly. The warmth of the stove greets her, and she sets the bag aside untouched. Snow falls silently through the night, and by morning the yard lies smooth and white under a pale sky. Clara spends the early hours with Anna at the kitchen table, sorting buttons into an old tin. Outside, Jack works on the barn door hinge, his hat pulled low against the wind. By midday, the clouds roll in heavy and low from the west. The wind begins to whistle through the cottonwoods beyond the fence. Jack steps in, brushing snow from his coat. "Stay in," he tells Clara. "I'll check the animals." Minutes later, the door opens again, but Jack's expression changes as he looks toward Anna. "Where's Toby?" Anna's brow furrows. "I thought he was with you." Jack glances at Clara, then back to Anna. "What do you mean? He went outside to find something," she says, slowly guilt creeping into her voice. "Said he dropped it." Clara's stomach knots. "What was it?" Anna swallows hard. "The little horse you made him." Jack moves toward the door, but Clara is already pulling her cloak from its peg. "The wind's too strong," he warns. "If he's frightened, he needs to hear me," she replies. Her voice steady despite the fear rising in her chest. "He knows my voice." They lock eyes for a long moment. Then Jack grabs a lantern from the shelf and lights it, the flame flaring against the glass. "Check near the split cedar tree," he says. "That's where they play." The wind hits Clara like a wall the moment she steps outside, stealing her breath. Snow stings her cheeks and clings to her lashes. She bends her head, following faint boot prints cutting through the drifts, the lantern light swaying with each step. Past the barn across the open yard, the trail winds toward the cottonwoods. She calls his name, but the gale swallows her voice. Already the snow is filling the tracks. At the split cedar, its twisted trunk bent like rope, she scans the whiteness beyond. Near the half-frozen creek, a dark shape crouches behind a boulder. "Toby," she shouts, forcing her way forward through the deep snow. He looks up pale-faced and wide-eyed, clutching the wooden horse in bare hands. "I found it," he says, his voice trembling. "But then I couldn't see the house anymore." Clara kneels in the snow, setting the lantern down so it casts a small circle of light around them. She unfastens her cloak and wraps it around him, pulling him close. His small body shakes violently from the cold. "You're safe now," she says, her voice low and steady, though her pulse races. "We're going home." She lifts him into her arms. He's light, but the wind fights her every step. Snow lashes her face, the ground shifting under her boots. She begins to hum, then sing, an old hymn her mother once used to calm her in storms. The tune is thin against the gale, but Toby's arms tighten around her neck. Step by step, she retraces the path. The lantern bobs ahead, its light a fragile promise in the white blur. Her legs burn, her breath comes in sharp bursts. The wind shoves and pulls, but she pushes on. At last the shape of the house emerges, its windows glowing faintly through the snow. The door swings open before she reaches the porch. Jack strides across the yard, takes Toby from her arms, and shields him from the wind as they hurry inside. Heat from the stove wraps around them. Anna rushes forward, tears spilling as she hugs her brother. Clara leans against the doorframe, her legs trembling. Jack sets Toby on the bench by the fire, strips away his wet boots and socks, and rubs his feet briskly with a towel. Then he turns to her. For the first time since they met, his eyes are not just steady, they're open, holding something unguarded and deep. "Thank you," he says quietly, "for bringing my boy back." Clara feels the ache in her arms, the cold still clinging to her skin, and beneath it a warmth that surprises her. She manages a small nod. Words wouldn't be enough. Anna presses the wooden horse into Toby's hands. He smiles faintly, clutching it close. Clara's damp cloak lies over the chair, but she leaves it there, content to sit in the glow of the fire. Outside, the storm roars on, but inside they are together, safe and whole. The storm burns itself out overnight, leaving the world hushed under a crust of ice and snow. By afternoon, the sky clears to a cold, brittle blue. Clara takes in laundry from the line, her gloves stiff and her breath curling white in the air. That's when she hears it hoofbeats steady and deliberate, approaching from the bend in the road. 4 riders emerge their horses, throwing up slush and mud. At their head is a tall man with the sort of smirk that never reaches his eyes. Curtis Pike. Clara's heard his name before land disputes, intimidation debts collected with threats. The riders slow as they enter the yard. Mud spatters the fence like old wounds. Curtis surveys the cabin, then fixes his gaze on her. Well, now he drawls his tone almost friendly, but the malice is right there beneath it. Seems the talk is true. living like a wife without a ring, raising another man's children with nothing but the wind to keep your name steady. Clara straightens the folded sheet she's been holding still in her arms. I don't need paper to know where I belong. One of the men behind him chuckles, but Curtis leans forward in his saddle, his voice low enough that she has to strain to hear. Belong folks without roots get carried off sooner or later. And the wind, Miss Merrick, is stronger than you think. From the corner of her eye, she catches movement. Jack stepping out from the barn, splitting axe in hand, his eyes pale as winter ice. Pike. Jack says evenly, if you came to talk about the south boundary, say it. If you came to insult someone in my house, turn your horse and go. Curtis shrugs lazily. Boundaries can wait. This is about the town. They don't like irregular arrangements. A man living with a woman who isn't his wife, children calling her ma. Makes people wonder. And when they wonder, the court listens. The South Lot claim could be revisited. All it takes is the right voices. The man behind him chuckles again, that damp, mean sound that makes Clara's skin prickle. She steps off the porch, her boots crunching in the frozen slush, until she stands close enough to see the flecks of frost in Curtis's whiskers. Do you think a piece of paper makes me more fit to care for those children? She asks, her voice steady but edged like the cold. I went into a blizzard to bring one of them home. I've mended their clothes, fed them, taught them while you've done what counted coin, and spread poison. The yard goes still but for the wind rattling the bare branches. Curtis's smirk fades into something harder. Reputation is everything here, and you don't have one. Reputation doesn't save a lost boy in a snowstorm, Clara says. It doesn't light a fire on a cold night. Yours keeps people bowing their heads, but I'm not one of them. Something flickers in his eyes, a quick break in his composure. He shifts in the saddle, his horse sidestepping in the packed snow. A solid crack of steel biting into wood cuts the air. Jack has driven the axe deep into a log, his voice ringing sharp across the yard. She stays. And if anyone thinks to use court or gossip to take this place from me, they'll stand right here and tell me to my face. The chuckles die. Two of the riders exchange uneasy glances. One adjusts his reins, angling his horse as if ready to leave. Curtis's jaw works. He yanks the reins sharply, wheeling his horse and spraying slush against the fence. Without another word, he rides toward the road, the others falling in behind him. The drum of their hoofbeats fades into the trees. Clara stands where she is, her heart pounding hard enough she can hear it in her ears. The sheet she'd been holding has slipped to the ground. Jack crosses the yard toward her, his voice low, carrying a faint trace of something almost like a smile. You didn't have to say all that. She meets his gaze, her breath still coming quick. Yes, I did. I'm not running this time. He studies her for a long moment, then simply nods. Behind them, the wind sifts through the cottonwoods, carrying away the last echo of hoofbeats. The dawn that follows comes soft and pale, spilling muted gold over the frost-laced fence rails. Clara is sweeping the kitchen floor when she hears the measured tread of boots behind her. Turning, she finds Jack in the doorway, something folded in his hands. He steps forward and holds it out. The fabric is worn but clean, a faded cotton apron, its ties softened by years of use. It belonged to Mary, he says quietly. She wore it every day. Until. He pauses, his gaze steady on hers. I don't have a ring to give you, but I've got my children. I've got my land. And I've got the faith that you're the piece we've been missing. For a heartbeat, the room seems to still. The only sound is the faint ticking of the stove. Clara looks down at the apron, her hands trembling as she takes it. The fabric is warm from where he's held it, and the weight of the gesture settles deep in her chest. Her throat tightens, but a smile pushes through, anyway soft certain. Then I'll wear it, she says. From the doorway of the children's room, Anna and Toby appear drawn by the stillness. They pad over in their stocking feet, their faces lit with curiosity. Does this mean you're staying? Anna asks. Clara kneels so she's eye level with them. It means, she says, her voice catching, that I'm part of this family now. Anna's eyes shine as she throws her arms around Clara's neck. No matter what the town says, she whispers. Toby joins the hug, his small arms wrapping around both of them. Jack stands a step back, his hands resting loosely at his sides, watching them with the kind of quiet pride that speaks louder than any vow. Later that morning, after the children have gone out to feed the hens, Clara steps onto the porch. The air smells of thawing earth, though pockets of snow still cling stubbornly in the shaded corners of the yard. In her hand she holds two small wooden birds, one carved by Jack, the other by the children. She threads twine through each and hangs them from a nail on the porch beam. The breeze catches them, their wings swaying gently in the light. They're not perfect. The wood grain shows through and their edges are still a little rough, but they catch the sun as if they've been waiting here all along. Clara stands there a long while, the warmth of the morning on her face. From the yard comes the cluck of hens, the crunch of boots in damp earth, and the sound of Jack splitting wood in a steady rhythm. The long winter she carried inside herself feels ready, at last, to melt. She looks down the road that curves toward town, then back at the small weathered house behind her. This wasn't the life she planned, but it's the one that has found her. Her fingers brush over the apron tied at her waist. "Home," she whispers, letting the words settle in the air like a promise. The door creaks open behind her. Anna stands there, hair, wind-blown cheeks, pink from the cold. "Pa says lunch is ready," she says. Clara smiles, following her inside, the warmth of the stove meeting her like an embrace. Outside, the two wooden birds sway in the breeze, keeping watch over the porch, as if guarding a place that's finally hers. Spring begins to edge its way into the Dakota territory, though the mornings still bite with frost. Clara wakes earlier these days, often beating Jack to the stove. She enjoys the quiet before the children stir, the moments when the only sound is the low crackle of kindling catching fire. One such morning, she's ladling batter onto the griddle when Anna bursts in from the porch. "There's someone coming," she says, her voice pitched with unease. Clara wipes her hands on her apron and steps outside. A lone rider approaches down the muddy lane, his pace deliberate. The man sits tall in the saddle, his coat open to show a clean waistcoat out of place among the rough wool and leather of farm country. Jack emerges from the barn, wiping his hands on a rag. His gaze narrows. "That's Wade Collins," he says quietly. "He's Pike's cousin, which means trouble." Wade reins in a few yards from the porch. "Morning," he says, tipping his hat without warmth. "I'm here on behalf of Curtis Pike. He's looking to settle the South Lot boundary dispute and other matters." Jack's jaw tightens. "The South Lot's been settled for years." "Maybe so," Wade replies. "But Pike's been talking with folks in town. They've noticed changes on your property. A woman living here without papers. Kids calling her Ma. You know how that sits with the court." Clara stands her ground beside Jack, the chill of the air mixing with the slow burn in her chest. "Tell your cousin we're not in violation of any law that matters. And if he has concerns, he can ride here himself and say them to my face." Wade's gaze slides to her, assessing. "You're bold," he says, "but bold doesn't always win here. Reputation's a fragile thing." Jack steps forward, closing the space between them until Wade's horse shifts uneasily. And so is a man's patience. This conversation's over. For a moment, Wade looks like he might press it further. Then he clicks his tongue, turns his horse, and rides off the way he came. Anna appears at Clara's side, her small fingers slipping into Clara's hand. "They're just trying to scare us," she says, her voice trembling. Clara squeezes her hand gently. "Let them try." The rest of the morning is quieter, but the encounter leaves a shadow over the day. Jack spends hours outside repairing the fence along the south lot, each hammer blow echoing across the field. Clara keeps busy in the kitchen, the children helping her knead bread until the dough is soft and warm under their palms. That evening, as the sun dips low, Jack comes in and sets a bundle on the table. Inside is a new bolt of fabric, sturdy but soft. "For dresses," he says simply. "Yours and Anna's. Thought you might want something that's yours, not borrowed from the chest." Clara smooths her hand over the fabric, feeling its weight. "Thank you," she says quietly. He nods once, as if that's all that needs saying, but she catches the faintest glint in his eyes before he turns away. Night falls with the steady sigh of wind through the cottonwoods. Clara lies awake for a long time, listening to the creaks of the old house, thinking about Pike and his threats. She knows the kind of men who talk in shadows and act through others, and she knows they'll be back. But now when she pictures them riding into the yard, she doesn't see herself alone on the porch. She sees Jack beside her, Anna and Toby just inside the doorway, and the weight of the apron's ties knotted firm at her back. For the first time in years, she feels the kind of belonging that makes you willing to fight for it. 2 weeks pass before the next sign of trouble comes, but when it does, it arrives like a summer storm, fast and without warning. Clara is in the yard with Anna hanging laundry on the line when a cloud of dust rises from the bend in the road. This time there are 3 riders, all strangers to her, but their posture, the way they spread out as they near the fence, speaks of intent. Jack emerges from the barn before they can dismount, his presence filling the yard. "State your business," he calls. The lead rider, a wiry man with a hat pulled low, tips his head. "Curtis Pike sent us to take a look at that south lot line. Court says there's cause to review it." "That lot isn't in dispute," Jack says flatly. "Maybe not in your book," the man answers, "but things change. Folks talk." His eyes flick toward Clara, especially when a place starts looking different. Anna stiffens beside her, and Clara steps forward, the wind tugging at her apron strings. You can tell Pike the boundary is staying where it is, and if he wants to see for himself, he knows the road. One of the riders spits into the dirt. "You've got a sharp tongue for someone with no stake in the deed." Clara feels the heat rise in her cheeks, but her voice stays even. "I have a stake in the people who live here, and that's more than you can say." Jack's voice cuts in low and controlled. "Mount up. You've seen all you're going to see." For a moment the men hesitate, as if weighing whether the trouble is worth it. Then the wiry one clicks his reins, and the 3 turn their horses toward the road. Dust swirls in their wake, carrying the tension with it. Clara exhales slowly. Anna is still holding her hand, her small fingers tight around Clara's own. "They're gone," Clara murmurs. Inside, the rest of the afternoon passes in quiet work. Jack sharpens tools at the workbench while Clara kneads bread. Anna and Toby sit at the table drawing with the stub of a pencil Clara found in the drawer. Every so often, she catches Jack's gaze lingering on the children, then on her, as if measuring the strength of what they've built here. That night, after the children are asleep, Jack sits across from her at the kitchen table. Between them lies a folded scrap of paper, an old map of the property. His finger traces the south lot line. This is what they're after. They think they can push it back, take the good grazing land. "And they're using me as the excuse," Clara says quietly. He meets her eyes. "They'll use anything if they think it'll give them an edge." Silence settles between them, broken only by the creak of the stove. Finally, Jack pushes the map aside. "I've fought over land before. But this time it's not just mine I'm fighting for." Her breath catches, but she says nothing. There's nothing to add to that, nothing that wouldn't cheapen the weight in his voice. When she goes to bed, the house feels different. Not safer exactly, but more solid beneath her feet. She knows trouble will circle back. Men like Pike don't let go easily. But the thought no longer fills her with the urge to pack her carpet bag. She's tied here now in ways paper can't prove. The weeks that follow carry the first real warmth of spring. Snow recedes to the shaded edges of the yard, and green shoots push through the thawing ground. Clara throws herself into the work of the season, turning soil in the garden plot, mending the chicken coop, and sewing new dresses for herself and Anna from the bolt of fabric Jack brought home. One clear morning, she finds Anna and Toby crouched at the edge of the porch, their heads bent together over a project. When she steps closer, she sees small lumps of wood in their hands, rough carvings shaped into birds. Pa showed us how Anna says, holding hers up. "It's for you." Clara takes the little bird, its wings uneven, but its body sanded smooth. "It's beautiful," she says, meaning it. That evening, Jack places his own carving on the table, a bird with finer lines and a graceful curve to its wings. "Thought it could have some company," he says. The next morning, Clara threads twine through each carving and hangs them from a nail on the porch beam. The breeze catches them, their wooden wings swaying together. They're imperfect, but they belong here just like she does. The sound of hoofbeats on the road pulls her gaze toward the lane, but it's only the neighbor boy riding past with a wave. Still, her heartbeat lingers in her ears long after the dust settles. Jack notices. "You're waiting for them to come back," he says that night as they sit by the fire. "I don't want them catching us off guard," Claire replies. "They won't," he assures her. "And if they try, they'll find this place harder to shake than they think." Her eyes drop to the apron tied around her waist, the fabric soft from years of use. "They think they can use me to get to you," she says. Jack leans back in his chair, regarding her for a long moment. Then they don't know you very well. Spring chores fill the days, and Clara begins to notice the subtle changes in herself. She moves through the kitchen as if it's always been hers, knows which boards in the floor creak when the children sneak out of bed, can tell by the sound of Jack's boots when he's coming in from the field. One afternoon, while hanging laundry, she glances toward the road and catches a group of riders far in the distance. They pause at the bend, then turn away. Whether it's Pike or his men, she can't tell, but they don't come closer. That night, as the sun dips behind the cottonwoods, Jack joins her on the porch. The air smells of damp earth and new grass. The wooden birds sway overhead. They'll test us again, he says. I know Clara answers, and when they do, we'll answer together. She turns to look at him, the fading light catching the edges of his face. Together she repeats the word, feeling like both a vow and a shield. The wind shifts, carrying the scent of the fields and the faint laughter of the children playing in the yard. For the first time in a long while, Clara feels something more than safety. She feels rooted. The air is warm enough now that the windows can stay open during the day, letting in the sound of the wind through the cottonwoods and the steady cluck of hens. Clara moves easily through her chores apron dusted with flour from the bread rising on the table. Anna and Toby race in and out of the house, their laughter trailing behind them like ribbons. From the porch, she can see the road winding away toward town, the same road she arrived on months ago in the bite of winter, her heart heavy with uncertainty. Now it lies under a soft haze of spring, and the thought of leaving it feels as foreign as the blizzard she walked through to find Toby. Late in the morning, Jack comes in from the field, brushing dirt from his hands. Fence along the north lot's holding fine, he says, setting his hat on the peg. His gaze lingers on the bread dough. Smells like you've been busy. It'll be ready by supper, she answers with a small smile. They eat early that evening, the table filled with fresh bread, roasted vegetables from the root cellar, and the first green shoots from the garden. Afterward, Anna and Toby beg for a story, so Clara settles on the porch with them, the children leaning against her while she tells an old tale her mother used to spin by lamplight. As she speaks, Jack sits a few steps away, whittling a small piece of pine. The shavings curl at his feet, catching the last light of day. The wooden birds sway above them, the twine creaking softly with each breath of wind. When the story ends, Anna rests her head on Clara's lap, and Toby curls against her side. The yard hums with crickets, the sky washed in the pale colors of dusk. Jack sets down his carving and looks over. You've made this place different, he says quietly. Clara meets his gaze. So have you. They sit in comfortable silence for a while, the children growing heavier as sleep pulls at them. When Clara finally stands to take them inside, Jack rises too, gathering the blanket from the porch rail to wrap around their shoulders. Inside, the warmth of the stove greets them, mingling with the smell of bread and the faint scent of pine from the carvings. Clara tucks the children into bed, smoothing their hair as they drift off. On the porch again, she leans against the railing, looking out over the darkened yard. The wooden birds swing gently in the night air. She touches the apron's ties at her waist, the gesture now instinctive, a small reminder of where she belongs. Jack steps out beside her. They'll keep talking in town, he says, but talk doesn't change what's here. No, she agrees. It doesn't. The moon climbs higher, casting silver light over the cottonwoods, the fence of the house. Everything feels quiet but alive, like the land itself has decided to let her in. Clara draws in the cool night air and releases it slowly. This is home, she says, not to convince herself, but because it's the truth. Jack doesn't answer, but the way he stands beside her, close enough that their shoulders nearly touch, says more than words could. In the distance, a barn owl calls, and the two wooden birds sway in the breeze, keeping watch. Your thoughts will help us create meaningful stories. And if you want to hear more powerful healing stories like this, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Click the bell icon so you don't miss any new episodes. And most importantly, share this video with someone who needs a little hope today. Thank you so much for your time. We hear you, we listen to you, and we are honored to tell these stories for you.